everybody, how's your day? Ame Gakita desu. Alright, so for today's random topic, we are going to talk about one thing I'm sure many of you who watch this video is wondering, like, is it really true or not? Do Japan really hate foreigner? Well, the thing is, right, today we are just going to discuss about it, talk about some of the points based off my experience, based off my idea, based off my more like living in Japan for 6 years and 3 months and how it is really like in Japan. So the thing is, right, do foreigner got a lot of hate in Japan? Well, yes and no. So the thing is that what you guys have to understand, I'm sure most of you will go to Google and like I really we've been talking about like people having like the nuisance streamers or people like discussing along the line of like, hey, you get out of Japan, we don't like foreigner whatsoever over the line. Yeah, the thing is, right, what you guys have to understand that in Japan there are also a lot of keyboard warrior people who just write in the comment section and so the thing is, right, is it really true they are represent the whole of Japan or not? Well, the thing is, right, we are going to discuss again, I mentioned, but what you guys have to understand is that in Japan, although as much as there is a country which is rich in culture, rich in delicious, have all the delicious food that you come up with, you can look for all the nice place, nice scenery, nice place, and I know a lot of people who go to Japan who want to go to study, for traveling, for work. So the thing is, right, the first thing you might, I'm sure all of you will be thinking on the like, hey, I want to stay in Japan. Whether it be a long term or short term, you have that feeling that whether is it a short term maybe for holidays or maybe a long term for study or work. So the thing is, right, we all really like wish to stay in Japan. Even I myself love Japan to the point that I stay in Japan for 6 years, but I couldn't anymore because of visa issue. So the thing is, right, is there any like bad thing that ever happened to me in Japan? Yes, on the first year, none afterwards, but a little bit at the end. So the thing is, right, it's more towards the point that a lot of people tend to have a misunderstanding that do foreigner hate Japan. Like if you guys go and search it out on articles, like let's say for example like this new article where message to foreigner at Japanese convenience stores but controversy online, where the message state that 外国人のお客様へこれ禁止肉まんくださいと言って which means that to all the foreigner customer, don't say this or that. Please say, I want the meat, bao, or dumpling, or whatever it's called. So the thing is, right, a lot of people is like, oh no, even the convenience store don't even like foreigner customer, or even to the line of this where actually people actually been kind of like commenting like, local complaining about foreigner, right? The situation changed from 5 to 6 years ago when the number of foreigners began to increase in apartment building home to many foreigner nations. Noise from karaoke rang out as people gathered around till late at night. Those are also problems with people gathering at the beach or in vacuum lot and not cleaning up after themselves. Even in travel or call, locals do not know where they are employed and they cannot communicate in Japanese. There is a limit to what the community can and do, and the local government is not medical. So the thing is, right, does that mean really that bad? Like even when people actually go to either Reddit to write, it's like I was talking to a Japanese native through a Japanese learning app, and he said something like insulted me for a bit, and that he hate foreigners living in Japan, and because they act Japanese, dress Japanese, speak Japanese. Respect them, but don't want them to live in Japan. Or even along the line of like, why are there so many racist who hate the foreigner in Japan? I was convinced that when I saw the number of this like in the condensing the justification of killing foreigner with expired visa, which I had no idea that was the case. So the thing is, right, a lot of people have like been watching Google or maybe search online or see article like, and even the hate for the nuisance streamer or YouTuber Fidia as well as Johnny Somali. It's like, do people really hate foreigner? Well, like mentioned, yes and no. The reason why I say yes and no is that you guys have to understand one thing, that when you actually count the number of people who comment on those videos or the people of who is talking that way, it does not reflect the whole of Japanese. I who had studied in a Japanese school, but not really a Japanese school, but more of a semokako, but where they allow foreign students. The thing is, right, I had communicated with most of the Japanese young students that there, way younger than me, but they actually communicate with me in Japan, and they Japan, and the thing is, right, it doesn't seems like majority of them hate me. I won't deny the part that is a few of them who have discomfort speaking with me, but which I will discuss about that in a while. But the thing is, right, what you have to understand is that it does not reflect to Japanese people hate foreigner. It's more towards the point, like if you actually look at this case where this article say is about controversy online, is that if you actually look down, there are actually people who actually defending foreigner. Like, I don't think the word foreigner should be used here. If it's a message for foreigner, shouldn't it be in English? Does that mean that Japanese people can say kore? Well, they shouldn't give their steamed bar such long name by pizza bun with cheesy cheese and tomato. Oh, they also give the bun number instead of given there are so many. Yeah, like, I want this number one, I want this number two. Why can't they just be like McDonald's when 1, 2, 3, 4 is so much easier? Like, it's hard for the start to see which. So the thing is, right, there are, as much as there are many people defending the reason why Kore can be a problem, like this or that can be a problem, it does prove in the sense that there are people, even in the article, like saying like even people are trying to provide assistance in Vietnamese and English to people who are, and also help Japanese language to help foreigner people to be integrated into the Japanese society and able to have the problem resolved between the local of Japanese as well as the foreigner who is living in Japan. So the thing is, right, it doesn't, a lot of people have the misconception that Japanese people hate foreigner. Well, yes and no. Is because yes, there might be some people who dislike Japanese people because of the different culture, the different of reason. But the most important thing, what a lot of people tend to need to realize, is that communication is actually the key. Like, just like how this article indicate that a Japanese language class. This thing, what you guys have to understand is that the reason why a lot of Japanese tend to avoid speaking to foreigner is that it's not that they hate foreigner. Japanese have a very funny mindset, is that they don't dare to speak to other people for fear of saying along the line like miscommunication. Does that mean a very good thing? Well, yes and no, because the thing is, right, to the Japanese, they think that as long as they don't speak to the foreign people, they will think that, oh, the people is not going to have a misunderstanding or bad impression of Japanese people. But on the other hand, foreigner who can't able to speak to Japanese people will have the misconception that Japanese people don't like to speak to foreigner. It's just that if you think about it, actually you can see both sides of the coin. The one thing that a lot of people need to understand is that in Japan, Japanese do learn English. There is English classes in Japan, and most of them are taught by foreigner people. But the chances of the Japanese people to use English is slim to none. The chance of Japanese people speaking in Japanese in Japan is just basically almost the must. So even for me who's living in Japan, doesn't mean that I tend to speak English all the time. It's more towards the point that I'm actually speaking in Japanese most of the time. But it depends on who I'm speaking with. And if I speak to let's say online where I need to reply in English, then there will be time when I speak in English. But at the time of this like this recording or whatsoever, Japan have finally opened up and more foreigner is starting getting back into Japan. So Japanese people have slightly more chance of speaking English, because they will be like, oh, we need to improve our English because there's English speaker theories along the line. So if you do come across people in the service department, some of them will speak not that good English, but at the same time understandable English. Just like how we when Japanese people are trying to understand our Japanese as a foreigner, we tend to, like, for me, even for me, I have a very hard time in Japan for the first year. So the thing is, right, if you go to Japan, does that mean that you have to speak very good in Japanese? Well, yes and no, because if you want to live in Japan for a long period of time, or maybe for study, learning Japanese help to make sure that you able to have a better communication with maybe your neighbors, or maybe when you go to buy some items, they'll ask you a few things and you need to have some sort of reply some way, somehow, somewhat. So learning Japanese actually does help. It's also like I mentioned, to prevent miscommunication and stuff. And a lot of people in Japan tend to have a misunderstanding that when I see a foreigner, I have to speak English. Well, the thing is, right, as for right now, there are a lot of foreigner people who is able to speak way more better English than a Japanese people. And I'm not even a Japanese. So the thing is, right, does that make me a good Japanese speaker? Nope, not really. It's more towards the point like having a communication in Japanese help to prevent misunderstanding, as well as to ensure that when you are buying stuff, it went smoothly. Like for me, when I one of the things that I ever have a hard time in my first day in Japan is that when I'm trying to buy furniture or want to buy some stuff, I always like delay a little bit of timing at the cashier because I have a hard time communicating, and often more than not that kind of give other people a misconception. It's like, oh, the misinterpretation that, oh, foreigner can't speak Japanese. But the thing is, right, often more than not, it's not because of that. It's more towards the point that I'm trying to make sure that when they're asking me like the payment or do I need a plastic bag, that is the time when I misunderstand and it take out some time. And when that happens, you kind of like feel very sumimasen. You just say to the back and say sumimasen. Like, yeah, people will be like, yeah, shokanai na. So the thing is, right, often more than not, communication tend to be the most important thing in Japan, and learning a little bit of basic Japanese does go a long way. If you're gonna go and stay in Japan for a short period or a long period, depending on how long you're gonna stay, yeah, learning Japanese is more important thing. But a lot of people will be asking like, hey, I thought you say Japanese learn English. Well, if you actually consider that the chance of people in Japan speak Japanese as compared to English, yeah, you can see why. Which I will talk about that in a while. But the thing is, right, what you guys have to understand that does that mean that everyone who type in the like, let's go back to the previous topic where I thought like, do all the people who hate foreigner people in Japan represent the whole of Japan? Not entirely, because what we have to see is at the population itself. Number one is that a lot of people tend to have a misconception is like foreigner, there is not much foreigner, where in fact there is 3 million currently, nearly up to 3 million of foreigner is staying in Japan, which take up around 2 to 3%. Because the number of population in Japan is actually in 120 plus minus millions in Japan. So the thing is, right, it does mean that there is that much people of population in Japan. So it means that in the sense that, yeah, around 2-3% is foreigner. But does that mean that the whole 1 million plus people hate, like, does that mean really 120 people hate foreigner? No. The reason why I say no is because that if we actually take like 1%, or even like the highest one, it would be 1%, or maybe 0.1% or 0.001%, depending on the rate, is not representative of every Japanese. Like, let's say 1%, that would be just mean that 1% of Japanese who hate foreigner would be just mean that there's only 1 million people hating foreigner. And I know that 1 million people of hating foreigner might be a huge amount, but the thing is that it does not mean that it's really that much, as compared that there might be 120 people will be loving white foreigner, or maybe they don't care. So the thing is, right, does that really mean the whole situation where is it really true? Well, like back to what I say is that, well, you have to understand that based on the population, we can't really state that is it the full 100% people hate Japanese. It's just that when the latest situation where people keep on showing like bad impression of foreigner, or maybe nuisance streamer like Johnny Somali and Vidya, it kind of create a little bit of bad impression of foreigner in a sense, but that doesn't mean that every foreigner people is that way. It's just that discriminancy does play a huge part in the hate, but it doesn't mean that the whole of Japan hate or foreigner people. There are Japanese people who hate even Japanese themselves. So we can't really go along the line like saying like, yeah, Japan hate foreigner. It's just along the line of like yes and no. If you guys see a lot of people commenting on Twitter or commenting on YouTube along the line like, hey, we are Japanese people, we hate foreigner, it does not represent the whole of them. It doesn't mean that all 120 plus millions Japanese hate foreigner. There are nice Japanese people who love foreigner, have to the point that there is even a small group of people call themselves the gaijin hunter, which be going a little bit off the topic. Number would be 69. Very nice, right? So if you guys actually go along and search it out like dating in Japan as a foreigner along the line, which I'll put this as in the title in the description below for you guys to check it out later on. The thing is, right, what you guys have to understand that there is really something along the line, like the extreme version of this is known as the Gaijin Hunter, and some will do everything for the sake of having one of those adorable half child, half Western, half Japanese, just to toss their foreign guys later on, or something like Japanese people just want to expect certain thing from women, things that they fear a foreign woman or disagree or whatever. It's like it just means they want to prove to the whole world that hey my 私の彼女、私の彼氏は外国人ですよ like trying to brag. That's just basically what they want to do. They kind of like take foreigner as their accessory. So if you do have a if you do have people who come up to you saying like, hey, let's go and date or something, you have to take it with a huge pin or sort though. Not a little bit, but a huge pin. Because we won't know, do they really love you, or is it just because of miscommunication, or maybe they just want to use you as an accessory? Well, I don't know, but it's and there are also time when actually Japanese people want to be French foreigner, is that they want to improve on their English, their communication issue. Like I mentioned, in Japan, if you guys look at it, 2% of population is foreigner, whereas around 98% is Japanese. It just mean to the point that it goes back to the question where do the Japanese have the chance of speaking English? Like I mentioned, it's just like trying to pull for a catcha, and you're trying to make sure that you reach the SR, the super rare 2%. So the thing is, right, does that mean that Japanese people have really not much chance of speaking in foreign language? Yes. Very, very rare. So it's more towards the point that a lot of Japanese friends that I made, they learn English, they know how to speak English, not entirely properly, but it's just to the point that they don't have the chance to use English on a daily basis. They've been using and speaking Japanese for a majority of their life, so it's more towards the point that communication can be a problem. And often more than not, that is one of the reasons why Japanese people try to avoid foreigner, is that because they wish not to have miscommunication. And if they do come out to you, probably they want to improve on their English, or towards the point that they want you to feel nice. But at the same time, I spoke to quite a few Japanese people. And also I was speaking to them in Japanese. Most of them tend to tell me around the line that communication is what caused them to be afraid of foreigner. So it's not towards hate. It's just that they do agree to the point that they hate foreigner who are a nuisance. So if you're a nuisance in Japan, then yep, you're gonna get an instant hate. So it doesn't mean that Japanese people hate foreigner all the time. It's just that if there is a nuisance person, whether be it a Japanese or a foreigner, people will hate them equally. Because people who create trouble, people who create nuisance, people creating drama just for the sake of contents, yeah, you're gonna get blacklisted. So overall, for me who lived in Japan for 6 years, I never really encountered much hate myself. That doesn't mean that I never come across a few hate. Yes, I do come across quite a few myself where people, but there is only on rare cases. And the funny thing to most of the situation is that there are times when I got protected by the Japanese people, where Japanese people just go out and tell them on the spot like, you're being a nuisance. So it's not really the point of like people hating foreigner or whatever. It's just that if you see across a comment, yeah, it just basically you have to live with it that there are some keyboard warrior or people who genuinely hate foreigner, but it does, like I mentioned, it does not mean that they represent the whole of Japanese. Japan is one of the huge country as compared to Singapore. Although I would say it's not as big as China, America, India or any other country, but 120 plus million population is quite a huge amount. So the thing is, right, I don't think you guys should be worrying like if you go to Japan, you should be afraid of Japanese people hating foreigner. If you do come across such people, ignore them, go about your life. don't care about them. It just, they live for the purpose of it, to the point that amazingly, what you guys might not be aware of, in Japan there is basically a party that is against foreigner. And yes, I was given an outlet or a flyer by the same party when they asked about me to join their cause, when I actually told them out on their face, 私は外国人ですよ. Well, it doesn't end well for the person over there, but at the same time, what you guys have to understand is that if you guys are going to Japan, going to stay for a long term, my advice would be along the line like, learn some Japanese, basic Japanese, as well as learning a little bit of culture and behavior of a Japanese people before moving in. If you're going for a short term, understand the simple basic of courteous of a Japanese people, and try to prevent doing things that is against their law, or maybe along the line of like that is easily offended a Japanese people. If you are able to do all that, is more than enough. But if you really want to know more on how to stay in Japan, or you want to go along the line of how to travel in Japan, so you really get a JR pass, yeah, I will put up 2 videos that I discuss about Japan in the description below, so that you guys can go and check them out if you need to. But with that being said, well, I hope, although I really want to talk a lot more, but I think there's way more, and I'm getting like along with the old man now. So yeah, I think that will be enough. So with that being said, don't forget to press the like button and subscribe for more random topic where I never follow a single trend. So yep. Yeah, if you think more towards the point, if you got any like experience you want to share, or what you think about Japan, or maybe along the line that you think that you got a hate before, or maybe you have some experience you want to talk about, or things you want to share, just write in the comment below. I'll read through them, and yeah, I'll give you guys my insight, or maybe I'll create a whole new video just for you to learn more from my perspective, or something along the line. But with that being said, have a nice day or night. Bye.